Once upon a time, there lived a girl, not unlike many of you. She had friends, although no one else could see them. Her parents thought they were imaginary, and she'd grow out of it. How wrong they were.
Mommy, tell Emma to stop being mean to me.
Little Charlotte had told her mother one day. She was puzzled.
Who's Emily, sweetie?
The girl who lives in my room.
There's no one in your room.
She tried to convince her after a while.
Yes, huh? She said she used to live here before she died.
A few years later is when the friends morphed into something much darker. As she played on the porch of her home, Charlotte would occasionally see things in the forest directly behind the house. There had always been a dark feeling she got from them. She was always too afraid to even look directly at them. Unfortunately for her, the thing seemed to venture closer each time she saw them. One night, distracted by a song playing softly on the radio, she neglected to see a being hovering behind her. As the feeling of dread seeped in, she knew it was there for her.
It's not there! It's not there!
She chanted to herself as she built up the courage to run toward the house. A hand grazed the side of her face before she could run off, however, and her legs felt like they were made of lead. Charlotte! The entity gripped her shoulder and its darkness began to cloud her vision. Finally able to move, she did the only thing she could think of. Her mother heard the scream and came barreling out of the house. She could have sworn she'd seen something standing behind her daughter, but as she grabbed the shaken girl, she told her nothing had been there. As Charlotte entered college, she thought she'd left it all behind. It'd been years since that night. She'd all but convinced herself it had been a trick of the light. This was New Orleans, for God's sake, and all that voodoo garbage was just that. The paranormal just wasn't real. So when her photography class had been assigned to take pictures of the destruction caused by Katrina, she jumped at the chance to photograph the nearly destroyed graveyard. The next day, a small group of Charlotte, her boyfriend Andrew, and classmate Laura set out determined to capture New Orleans' most infamous dead.
I can't believe they're actually letting us photograph all this.
Andrew shouted as they made their way through the cemetery. Everything was in disarray and multiple graves laid open. The storm had taken its toll on this place. That was for sure.
Shouldn't the city be doing something about this? Pretty sure bodies aren't supposed to be out in the open.
Laura, they're dead. What do you care?
Disrespectful.
As they continued through, they came upon many prominent names. The most familiar, however, was that of Marie Laveau, famed voodoo queen of her time.
I heard she used to hex people for fun.
Hello? Anybody home?
Andrew taunted, banging on the placard with her name on it.
I'm sure the old bat was just crazy.
Andrew continued throughout the mausoleum, smashing vases of flowers and shouting for Marie to show herself. What they failed to notice was the eyes of a shadow that followed them from the moment they entered the crypt. It wasn't Marie. No. A demon had followed them. As the sun lowered, they could feel a shift around them, almost as if the air was being sucked out.
Guys, I don't like this. What if all the stuff we've read about her is true?
Laura had said.
If she's so big and bad, why doesn't she just take over my body? Some powerful voodoo queen she was.
After that, Laura had been too freaked out to continue, and the group planned to meet to develop the film later that week. He'd been acting weird for days, angry at everything, and Charlotte couldn't stand living with him anymore. It was like he was a completely different person. Andrew had changed. The incident in the courtyard that morning had shaken her pretty badly. A normal walk to the class had turned into something crazy. Some guy had bumped into Andrew, and before he could apologize, he was nearly foaming at the mouth. Charlotte and her friends had tried to hold him back as Andrew screamed.
You think you can stop me? I have darkness on my side that's more powerful than any of you!
His eyes were bloodshot, and he was truly terrifying.
Have a look at these!
Laura had called.
Did you guys get something on the lens?
It couldn't have been right. A black blur was in every single photo. The last pictures of them goofing around at the gate showed a black glare around Andrew. The final photo showed him leaning against the car with his face completely distorted, the blackness engulfing him completely. There was something wrong. She knew it. Her professor had taken one look at the photographs and had directed her immediately to the religion department.
I've seen this before, I'm afraid.
Reverend Whittam explained.
All signs point to demonic possession.
She couldn't believe her ears. True, he'd been extremely aggressive lately, and had even lashed out at her a few times.
When did he begin to act differently?
I think right after the pictures were taken. He was messing around, daring the spirits to take over his body. He didn't mean it.
I fear it's far worse than I thought. He's opened a door. We must hurry. We must hurry.
It had taken time to get everything ready. The rivermen had called in priests from the Catholic Church, and for their safety they tied his hands and feet to the bedposts. As the ritual began, loose items in the room crashed to the floor, and all the chairs began to levitate. Inhuman growls sprung from Andrew, and the bed shook uncontrollably.
Free this child! I rebuke you in the name of the Father!
As the priest read from his Bible, Andrew slipped one of his hands out of the restraints. He then broke a bed spring from under the mattress and used it as a weapon, slashing the priest's arm from wrist to shoulder. Throughout the home, doors slammed open and shut, and guttural screams seemed to emanate from the walls.
I'm going to get you.
Unclean spirit, along with every other satanic power of the enemy, every specter from hell and all your fellow companions, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ!
The priest's voice continued to get louder and more forceful until the demon weakened. With one final howl, Andrew slumped on the bed, completely spent. It was the end. Or was it? The exorcism had gone horribly wrong. Yes, Andrew had been freed, but she'd been the only one they sought from the beginning. As it took over her soul, the girl known as Charlotte died. Her body was now animated by dark forces inside. So that night, when he heard scratching sounds on his front door, Andrew was grateful it was only her. Thank God that was over.
Where have you been? I've been calling you for hours and... What's up with your clothes?
Covered from head to toe in dirt, she calmly stood behind him as he shut the door. Without a second thought, he began down the hallway knowing she'd follow him. When the scratching sound began again, he turned to see her staring at him with an odd look on her face.
What?
Was all he was able to say before she lunged at him. With the same rusty bed spring he'd wielded that morning, she slit his throat. The blood sprayed everywhere, and she tossed the spring upon his lifeless body before disappearing into the night. Until this day, no one really knows what happened to Charlotte. Rumors say she wanders the streets, unable to contain the murderous demon inside her. She could... Wait. Do you hear that? Oh no. It's at your door. There's something at your door.